The president just posting moments ago, he has now decided to, quote, postpone any and all military strikes on Iranian power plants after 2 days of talks with Iran. This, of course, comes after the president had issued an ultimatum. He was demanding Iran reopen the Strait of Hormuz by tonight, or he warned that they would be risking strikes on their power plants. CNN's Kevin Liptak is at the White House this morning. So the president's message this morning is the window is now a little bit wider in terms of that deadline. What else in terms of these talks, Kevin?
Yeah, and that I think is what is most extraordinary about this post that we've gotten from the president. Until now, we did not understand that the U.S. and Iran were speaking at all over the course of this now 3-week-long conflict. Now the president says that these conversations are underway. And so you can start to see and start to envision how potentially there is a diplomatic route to de-escalation that we did not know of until, 10 minutes ago before the president was posting this. And I'll read you a little bit of what he said. He said he's pleased to report that the United States, the country of Iran, have had over the last 2 days very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. The president goes on to say that based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I've instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of the ongoing meetings and discussions. So you do see the president opening the window of this ultimatum that he had set on Iran, that he would strike power plants in that country if it did not reopen that very critical Strait of Hormuz, where all those energy tankers are waiting to go through. It's causing the price of oil to spike. Iran had threatened very severe retaliation, not only on energy strikes, but also on facilities in the Gulf. Now, some big questions remain, namely who the U.S. is talking to, because remember, the president had said that the Iranian leaders that he thought he could work with had been killed. Now he says that those conversations are ongoing and, according to him, very fruitful. And so very significant development, I think, this morning, and does lead you to believe that the president has, or is at least searching for something of an off-ramp here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will see what more we learn about that potential off-ramp. Kevin, really appreciate it. Thank you. Sarah?
All right, joining us now, CNN senior military analyst and the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, Admiral James Stavridis. Thank you so much for being here. This just came in to us this morning. The president saying, look, we're having talks and they're going well. Is that a surprise to you? Because a lot of people don't realize that oftentimes, even in the midst of war, there are always sort of talks going on, but there is the issue of who is leading Iran. Apparently, they know who that is, and they've been talking to them.
Well, first and foremost, let's all just say, wow, are we allowed to have some good news for at least 1 minute? And, it's going to be a roller coaster, but I think this is good news. And Sarah, you're exactly right. There's almost always kind of at least back channel conversations. I've been hearing about them from several sources. And here's what you want to watch as this roller coaster unfolds. I'll give you 3 things to watch. Number one, where are literally Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff? Because they are the ones who are going to be the U.S. side of this. Keep an eye on their normal counterparty, the Iranian foreign minister, still alive by all accounts. Abbas Aroghi is his name. So watch those 3. Where are they? Are they popping up, for example, in a place like Geneva? Number 2, watch the Marines. The Marines are still kind of chugging along toward the Gulf. The first big Marine force gets there in 7 days. Another one right behind it 2 to 3 weeks later. And then number 3, all eyes are going to continue to be on the Strait of Hormuz. Again, this is good news, but we just heard from our gas guy, and he laid out pretty clearly the strait's going to have to open before this is going to really turn into good news. But bottom line, Sarah, yeah, it's always better to be talk than bombs away.
Joining us now, CNN political and global affairs analyst Barak Ravid. This just came in this morning, and so I know it's a fast thing to have to try to figure out what happened here. But what do you know about this? This was a bit of a surprise, at least to many who thought that deadline was fast approaching.
Yes, I think it was a big surprise. At least last night, I spoke to several U.S. officials that none of them thought, sorry, none of them thought that the ceasefire is coming or that there's any diplomatic opening. And I think that from what I learned in the last few minutes is that over the weekend, several countries from the region tried very hard to at least buy more time and sort of prolong Trump's 48-hour ultimatum to the Iranians to try and get some sort of diplomacy going. And those countries spoke to both Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and White House envoy Steve Witkoff to try and get more time. And I think that at least this initial effort, as we saw, was successful because it managed to get Trump to say, okay, I'm giving it another 5 days for diplomacy to see if we can get something going. By the way, those talks, as far as I understand, are not just about the Strait of Hormuz. They're about trying to launch a diplomatic process that ends the war. Obviously, the Strait of Hormuz is a very big part of it, but it is not just something that is focused on the Strait of Hormuz. It's much wider.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. If indeed they're talking about how to end this war and that those conversations are actually going on. You mentioned the foreign minister involved in this. So there is someone, because at some point President Trump said that he didn't know who to talk to because so many of the leadership had been killed. It sounds to me like what you're learning is that the foreign minister is very much involved in this and maybe heading this up. So does it appear there is a diplomatic path out of this?
Well, it's a big question mark. You know, it just happened 30 minutes ago, and you know, I think President Trump decided to give it more time. I think was a good decision, but it still doesn't mean that an agreement is around the corner, and it also doesn't mean that the talks that are ongoing with Iran's foreign minister, who is, I think, his main quality at the moment is that he's the only one who answers the phone over there, because many other people are in hiding and are not communicating over the phone. So it doesn't mean that the leadership that is running the show right now, mainly the commanders of the IRGC, that they are ready for any kind of deal. The Iranian foreign minister, although he's a government official, senior government official, he does not call the shots, or at least he's only one part of a much bigger decision-making process. So I think, you know, we should first try to find more details about what exactly happened, and second, keep our expectations low when it comes to the ability to get a deal. There's more time on the clock, which is super important because a U.S. strike on Iranian power plants would have triggered a massive Iranian retaliation against power plants all over the region, against desalination factories, against critical infrastructure, which would dramatically escalate this war. So the fact that President Trump gave it another 5 days is a hugely important step and hugely important decision, because it means that he understands that, you know, what kind of escalation such a strike would trigger, and that he's willing to try and find a diplomatic off-ramp.
This just into us right now. Iran is now denying that they are in talks with Washington. This is just an hour after President Trump claimed the U.S. has had productive conversations with Tehran. According to Iranian state-affiliated media outlets, Iran accused Trump of trying to lower energy prices and buy time for military plans. Earlier this morning, Trump said he was putting military strikes on Iran's power plants on hold for at least 5 days, pending the outcome of these talks. That is what he put on Truth Social. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jake Auchincloss of Massachusetts. Thank you so much. Okay, so we just got this in that Iran is denying that they're having talks with the president's people. What do you make of all this? Because the president has backtracked on a deadline to what he called obliterate power plants in Iran if they didn't open the Strait of Hormuz.
Sarah, good morning. Thanks for having me on. The president has backtracked on almost all of the original strategic rationale that he dripped out to the American public after the war started. I'm sure there are back-channel conversations happening between Iran and the administration right now, but the reason we are hearing Iran flex this way is because they have a new strategic asset. When this war began, Israel and the United States had air dominance over Iran. Now that this war is 3 weeks old, they still have air dominance, but Iran also now has its own strategic asset, which is sea denial. Iran has demonstrated to the world that it can selectively close the Strait of Hormuz to international oil transit, and that is spiraling global markets. And Iran understands that while it is operationally under stress from the tempo and the kinetics from Israel and the United States, it is strategically actually in a stronger position now than it was 3 weeks ago. This president has failed in this mission.